Welcome on into the Wolverine TV. Clayton Sayfie here with EJ Holland. Check us out at thewolverine.com with the promo code BLUE60 to get your 60-day free trial to all of our premium content. But right here, we are going to break down the 5 biggest things that we learned in the month of July about Michigan football recruiting. It was a little bit of a slow start to the month in terms of satellite camps were over for the time being, no more visits, but Michigan was able to get some residual effects from their efforts in June when they hit those satellite camps, when they hosted visitors each and every weekend. They landed 4 new commits. That's the first thing we learned. The Wolverines adding 4 guys to their class. 3-star tight end Colston Loveland, 4-star defensive end Mario Eugenio, 4-star corner Miles Pollard out of the Nashville, Tennessee area, and then 3-star linebacker edge rusher Micah Pollard, no relation, but he is related to Braylon Edwards, former Michigan great, or current Michigan great, former player. So, EJ, what did you kind of take away from the Wolverines closing with these 4 prospects?
Yeah, I think with this start, I guess the start to July was really strong. Things kind of faded in terms of landing commitments the rest of the month, but these are 4 really quality lands. Starting off with the guy pictured here, Mario Eugenio. Rivals 250 prospect, one of Michigan's highest rated commits in the class. While he's a bit of a tweener between a 5-tech / stand-up edge rusher, I mean, he's a guy that gets after the quarterback, really high motor, and he's a prospect that the staff values even more than his ranking. He's a guy that they made a priority from the very beginning of the cycle and were able to close with him this summer. He obviously officially visited in June and then pulled the trigger in July. And another priority target, Miles Pollard. I had my pick in for Pollard since March 1st. And so he was a Michigan lean for a long, long time. And he finally shut things down. I know the staff was really excited to get him on board. He's a prospect that new cornerbacks coach Steve Clinkscale evaluated and offered first at Kentucky. So I know Klink was very, very excited to close the deal with him. And Will Johnson has been Michigan's 5-star cornerback commit, has been actively recruiting Pollard to join him. And I know he was fired up as well. I thought the Micah Pollard, 3-star outside linebacker out of Jacksonville Bartram Trail, I thought the Micah Pollard recruitment was one of the best recruitments for this staff so far. Michigan led early, then lost that lead to Auburn. And even though Micah is Braylon Edwards' nephew and he still has family in Michigan, he's from Jacksonville. He was born down in Florida, so he's still a Southeast kid. And so to have a big offer like Auburn and for Michigan to lose the lead and then come back and regain the lead and close with him, I thought was a really impressive job by George Hilo, who has a lot of ties in the Jacksonville area, Michigan's new linebackers coach. So that, again, was just a really, really nice job by the staff to come back and win that recruitment. Mike McDonald, Ryan Osborne also heavily involved there. And then Colston Loveland, I thought was also a really great job by Jay Harbaugh, Michigan's tight ends coach. Loveland wasn't even scheduled to officially visit Michigan in June. He did end up making the visit, and then he committed in early July. The fact that he didn't have an OV plan, then made an OV and then committed, all in the span of a few weeks, I think is a testament to Jay Harbaugh and the job he did recruiting Loveland and the job the entire staff did on his official visit. And Loveland's only a 3-star tight end, but he's, hidden way out there in Idaho. I think that his ranking will rise this season with a strong senior year. He's only been really focused on tight end for about a year. He's a converted receiver, just a ton of upside. The 4 guys they got in July, I really like. Eugenio's a top 250 guy. I think Miles Pollard is a top 250 level guy. I think Colston Loveland is a top 250 level guy. And I think Micah Pollard is just a really, really safe take and a productive high school player. So I thought the small group of commits in early July was really strong.
Definitely. And then, kind of building off of that, the next thing that we learned was Devonte Miles decommitting from Michigan, 3-star defensive tackle out of River Rouge near Detroit. This is an interesting one. We talked about it on one of our recent shows, but just to kind of go over it quickly again, the fact that Devonte Miles did commit to Michigan while Don Brown was the defensive coordinator. Then obviously he gets fired. Mike McDonald comes in. You're switching a scheme. So there's always going to be the kind of that transition where, hey, do we want you? Do you want to be, playing in this scheme? Seemed like it was kind of one of those things where both sides were going to evaluate things, over the next several months. That's what they did. And, they kind of came to the mutual decision that Devonte Miles will move on and take a look at some other schools.
Yeah, I think, with Devonte Miles, the writing was on the wall. We had mentioned it a couple of times, over at the Wolverine, that Michigan was continuing to evaluate him. He went out to the satellite camp at Big Rapids, performed in front of Sean Nua and some of the other staff members out there. And at the end of the day, I think Miles was just a case of a guy they just took too early. They also had a scheme change as they transitioned from Don Brown to Mike McDonald. And I think it was just best for both parties to go their separate ways. Even though Michigan doesn't have, a big group of defensive line commits or anything like that, I think from a scheme fit perspective, from a talent level perspective, Michigan is looking for something a little different. And I think Miles is a guy that can succeed, somewhere else. I know Indiana is a big school for him. I think that would be a nice fit for him, somewhere like a West Virginia or something like that, Michigan State maybe. But overall, I think, it was, I wouldn't say it's a positive, but I think it's, it's best for both parties.
I was muted there for a second, but yeah, definitely seemed to be kind of something that was almost the inevitable at a certain point, to a certain extent. The third thing that we learned, the barbecue at the Big House was back this year. Obviously, was not able to happen last year, everything being virtual. But Michigan bringing in tons of top targets, almost all the 2022 commits for unofficial visits, eating some barbecue, another pool party it looked like at Jim Harbaugh's house. The staff kind of putting that, full court press on, or, kind of the red carpet treatment, even though red, I guess, isn't, allowed in the building. But that red carpet treatment, so to speak, for these guys coming into town, and it seemed to be a pretty big success.
Yeah, last year they weren't able to have the Big House barbecue just because, COVID obviously prevented that. So, it was brought back this year. It's a tradition that's been maintained through various coaching staffs. And I think Harbaugh did it a little bit different this year. Last year was my first full cycle on the Michigan beat. So this is the first barbecue at the Big House that I've covered, I guess. We're not allowed to be there, but that, I've reported on. So I don't know how it functioned in the past, but they actually had barbecue lunch at the Big House, and Jim Harbaugh took all the recruits over to his house for more barbecue and some salmon for dinner. So it was kind of a split between barbecue at the Big House and a cookout at Jim Harbaugh. So I think he added his own little twist to the event. I think it's been really positive this summer to see Jim Harbaugh having recruits at his house, just because it gives recruits some downtime to get to know him personally, families to get to know him personally, and obviously the other staff members are there too. So parents get to mingle with the coaches, get to know these guys on more of a personal level, and not just, here we are at film meetings. Here's what the NIL pitch is. Here's what the strength and conditioning program is like. This is just more of an intimate, casual setting at Harbaugh's house, which I think is really cool. And then, the recruits still enjoyed having lunch at the actual Big House and getting to walk around. And like I mentioned, they did some of the normal things they've done on the visits throughout the summer. They did the strength and conditioning program. They walked around campus, looked at the dorms, looked at the academic buildings. And then, as I said, the NIL pitch, is something that they really focused on. They had a Spike Lee theme and a different background setting. They really honed in on Michigan's network and the alumni base, as well as, the Jordan brand and all of that. So we'll see how it goes. Michigan's trying to pick up the pace with NIL as other schools are rapidly utilizing it. So I think Michigan's trying to take advantage too. And that was, on display for recruits on the barbecue visit.
Mm-hmm. Next thing, and EJ, I don't, like to make, comparisons like this, but I want to get your thoughts on Dillon Tatum. I think he was something that we learned last month as well, the fact that he had not made his decision yet. It's been delayed a couple times, and he's obviously pretty torn up about the decision, pretty split between Michigan and Michigan State. He is drawing comparisons to a possible Drew Kendall, to George Rooks, who did end up at Michigan. But Dillon, obviously, he's a super, smart and seems like a calculated type of kid, and he's just trying to make the best decision. And hey, he's got plenty of several months here until signing day, so it's not like a thing where he's stretching this beyond signing day or anything like that. But it seems like he does want to make a decision before his senior season starts, but has still yet to do that.
Dillon, what are you doing? I mean, I met with him a couple of weeks ago, and I just made a random swing through Detroit. Actually, Dillon is in Houston as we are recording this video, competing in the Junior Olympics. So I was actually going to try to find a stream to see him run. But yeah, I mean, Dillon's been torn between Michigan and Michigan State for a while. When he originally set his decision date in April, so it's been since April that we've been waiting for Dillon's decision. At the time, I feel like there were still some other schools kind of there, but he had an idea that it was Michigan, Michigan State. Now, for the last couple of months, through basically the course of the entire summer, it's only been Michigan, Michigan State, and I feel like he's been really, really torn between both schools. He's visited both schools on multiple occasions this summer. Camp starts for West Bloomfield on Monday, August 9th. I know Dillon wants to make a decision before August 27th, I believe, is West Bloomfield's opener. So he'll be back from the Junior Olympics later this week. And ideally, again, he wants to make his decision before this season starts, which is in late August. But with camp and everything going on starting Monday, I think Dillon would like to make a decision sooner rather than later. Obviously, that hasn't happened. Both schools would gladly take him, especially with Michigan missing on some of their big safety targets over the last couple of months. Keon Saab going to Clemson, DeArco Perkins McAllister going to TCU. So, both schools really, really want him on board, and I don't think there's anything else that either school can show him. It's up to Dillon to make a decision at this point.
Definitely. So obviously still weighing his options there. And you mentioned kind of missing on recruits, on the safety side of things. Same things kind of going on in the linebacker side of things over the last month. Michigan lost Sebastian Cheeks. They just most recently lost Jeremy Patton as well to Baylor. Sebastian Cheeks going to North Carolina, a kid from the Midwest, Chicago area, Evanston, where the Wolverines felt like they led at one point. But the board is just kind of changing rapidly. It feels like it keeps expanding. They'll hone in on a target, and then they've kind of seen some targets go elsewhere, and then they'll hone in on some more. But Michigan just continuing to try to find some linebackers in this class.
Yeah, you look at the edge rushers, and you have a talented trio of hybrid edge rushers. You have Devonte Henry, who's a pure pass rusher. Then you have Mario Eugenio, who could play with his hand in the dirt and was recruited as a little more of a stand-up edge rusher. And then you have Micah Pollard, who was also recruited as a stand-up edge rusher, but has the flexibility to play a more traditional outside linebacker role. But when you look at the true inside backers, obviously in the 3-4, you have two inside backers.
I should have said that too. The inside backers, that we're
right.
Yeah,
your inside backers. So right now, your only commit is Aaron Alexander, who's more of a project type guy. He's a 2-star recruit. It's the lowest rated commit in the class right now. And no offense to Aaron Alexander. Like I said, he's more of a project high upside guy, but that's a type of player that's going to take years to develop that might not make him an impact until really late in his career. So, Michigan wants to at least pair one high level linebacker with a guy like Alexander. When you're taking a project, it's necessary to land a high level guy. I think you missed on Josh Burnham early in the cycle, which really hurt. He's off to Notre Dame and, grew up a Michigan fan. So that really hurt. Then you have your next big guy in the Midwest, Sebastian Cheeks, who made his OV last month and decided to go to North Carolina. You had a silent commitment at one point from Jeremy Patton, and that recruitment was absolutely bananas, and he ended up, staying close to home and picking Baylor. You offered Manny Powell from Ohio, And then a week later, he commits to Arkansas. You press for Deuce Spurlock, a 3-star prospect from Alabama, back off because you think you're getting Patton, and now it looks like he might stay closer to home. So the linebacker board has just been a revolving door. There's been names just flying off the board. And at this point, you look at what's left, and the top target right now is Lander Barton, 4-star linebacker out of Utah, who Jim Harbaugh personally flew out to see in the summer. Michigan is scheduled to get an official visit in September, but pulling him from Utah is going to be tough. Actually, Utah, the university, is the favorite in that recruitment. Texas is very involved there. Texas having the same type of luck as Michigan, also missing on Sebastian Cheeks and Jeremy Patton. So it seems like they're battling and missing for the same targets. But Texas also involved with Lander Barton, and then some of the Pac-12 schools like UCLA and Oregon in the mix there as well. But he'll be a tough pull from out west. If you don't get Lander Barton, I think Michigan's kind of revisiting things with Deuce Spurlock. But like I said, it looks like Mississippi State's making a little bit of a harder push. Ole Miss has gotten involved. South Carolina just offered yesterday. So that might not be the easy win that it looked like it could be earlier this summer. And then after that, there just aren't a lot of guys. They might revisit some guys they offered early in the cycle and cooled on. Some new guys might pop up. They might try to flip some guys, wait until the season. But right now, inside linebacker recruiting is hurting. I don't think you can just take Aaron Alexander and be done with it, especially as you're switching to a new defensive scheme and you want guys that fit the type of profile that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that we're kind of learning as we go in terms of what exactly is going on with the linebacker board, and we will continue to monitor that as the weeks here progress. And like you said, there's not as much left as you probably would have liked at this point, especially with only one guy in the fold at the inside linebacker spot. But we'll see what the Wolverines do. You can join us at thewolverine.com. Use the promo code BLUE60 there to get all of our premium information. Again, promo code BLUE60, and we'll see everybody over on the site.